represent 25%. Universities are 75 in round numbers. And of these, there's 10, 5 are law firms. And they're the only ones that really see an ROI on any of this stuff. Because as Tim was mentioning, when a couple of us are going to form a company to go actually, because we got introduced to a technology, the first thing we need to do is actually go form a company, which means typically we need some sort of legal help to go about doing that. So they have an immediate need that needs to be satisfied right away, because there is sort of until they get that option in place, the university can basically go license that technology to anybody that they want. So they need to get that legal entity set up that can then conduct the licensing agreement with the university. Next slide. So what do they get out of this whole thing? This is more geared towards the corporate sponsors, but what we like to do in our sort of sales pitch to them is they go under a brand halo. Hopefully they think we're creating this rising economic tide around here that they all benefit from. And typically the sponsors that we go after sort of feed off the entrepreneurial ecosystem around here, so to speak. So it's people like law firms. We've got a couple of accounting firms in there. Then there's Wells Fargo, the one bank. We used to have another one as well that was more on the SBA side of things. Then it's a PR firm, insurance firm, and I guess a PR firm also does websites as well. So it's mainly people that sort of survive off this entrepreneurial ecosystem. The other thing that they do get is some exposure to these 4,200 individuals in our network, and that's mainly through constant contact emails. I think to date I've sent out somewhere north of 82,000 emails at this point. Not 82,000 overall, but to 82,000 recipients. So they go out pretty frequently as we need to send them. And the good news about some of the content we're able to deliver to people, it's things like job opportunities, it's things like access to technology. And generally people view these things as higher quality content. So our open rate's up around 35–40%, which is really high for some of this stuff. And we know that. They sort of know it, and it's an impression thing for them, and hopefully they're gaining from it by association with our brand. The unfortunate side of this, and this is another piece, if you guys are really going to do this, most of the sponsors, what they're really familiar with, what they really want, are event-driven organizations. We made a decision a long time ago just not to do that. We're not really set up to do the events. In Boulder, it's a little bit different too. There's a lot of other organizations that have a lot of events. I mean, Brad fills that courtroom right next door to us. Literally once a month, there's a waiting list, and there's 300 people in there. So there's a lot of other people doing events. And if you really wanted to in Boulder, you don't have to eat dinner at home any night of the week. You can just go to events every night. That's what you need to do. And then client referrals are sort of, I guess, if they believe we're creating a rising tide, the client referral sort of seals it. We've done a lot of them. The challenge that we have a lot of times is you're dealing with either our university clients that are just in the very early stages of formation and people are writing personal checks for this stuff, which means they don't have a ton of cash, or we're dealing with other startups that don't have a lot of money either. So our sponsors' interaction with some of the referrals that we get, hopefully I typically allow them to decide who they want to work with, and I let those two sides work out, which I'll talk about on the next slide here. But what they're hoping to do is sort of get a very early introduction into a company that's going to be a much bigger company that can pay the full freight. And a lot of times what we're doing, we might go to the next slide because I'm starting to talk about this stuff anyways. Ideally what they're starting to do is build a relationship with a company that's going to be pretty significant. That has happened with a few of our clients, so we do have some success stories to point to, but out of the 450, that's not the vast majority of them. It's not. So, but here's basically how the referral process works. First thing that we want to do is just identify that there's a need out there, and we want to make sure that matches one of our sponsor service. We always go over our list of sponsors with the clients when we start. Most of them will pay some attention to them. Our basic pitch is we just tell them that we're the yellow pages for startups. So if you have a need, just come talk to us. And hopefully we can find somebody locally here that can satisfy that need for it. The other thing is we want to make sure that that client's need is realistic, that it's not just some knee-jerk reaction that they heard to in a meeting, that they do understand that, okay, here's what it's really going to take for you to go. If you are going to work with a lawyer, you might as well at least like them because you are going to spend some money with them, and typically, you don't want to skimp on some of that stuff because an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure in a lot of these cases later on. We will educate the clients on using the on the sponsor's service. And then we put it into a common format and distribute it to all the sponsors in a given service category at the same time. So our 5 law firms all get the referral at the same time. So then it's up to them to contact the client that's in need of the service, and it's up to both parties to decide if there's a relationship there. We don't get in the middle of negotiating fees. I don't recommend one over the other. Some are pretty obvious when one of our law firms, say, focuses on pretty much mainly intellectual property. If you need some contracts done, they're probably not the best resource for it. But people sort of sort that out.
I have a question. It's not exactly related to this, but something you said that complimented the process. So the university refers some to you, and those are generally the ones who go start out. So if someone came to the tech office and wanted to license that, but it's already been kind of moved to you, does it ever happen that the university can license it, or is once it moves into the innovation center, it's still there for some period of time?
It depends on the license, but generally, once you've licensed it, that's typically an exclusive
No, that's
for
what I
field
mean.
use.
Has it been licensed to the team when it moves into ICR?
Basically, we ask them not to undermine the process. So that's basically, I mean, they technically could do it contractually, but if they do that, then they kind of undermine the whole relationship in the process. So when they ask us to work on it, we tell them, hey, you're committed to this, right? So if someone calls you, you can't answer the phone until we kind of reach an endpoint, or you just put it on hold. And that creates tension. If Kate's under pressure to pay the bills with the licensing revenue, and she's got to assess where we're at and the likelihood that she's going to get a return from that process, and kind of take it off the street during the period. But we actually haven't had that as an issue. But we're working with someone like Kate who understands the consequence of her going, like, giving it to us. We're working on it, putting a lot of energy. Got a CEO going. And she goes, oh, by the way, I just got a call from Abbott, and I just licensed that. That would be a really bad day. So
she doesn't, when she moves in, you don't have an agreement for like 6 months or 12?
No, not formal. It's more of an agreement, just a working relationship.
We go to the next slide. So what Tim was talking about earlier was a lot of our interaction with the universities. And that does take up probably 85–90% of the organization. But where we got our start was originally helping entrepreneurs at a local community here, mainly natural and organic foods, which Boulder is the self-declared center of the universe for that. And then also software and IT. Other places would argue there's some spots in California that apparently I've heard are bigger. I'm not going to argue that point. That would be absolutely pointless. But what I did think I would do is just spend a couple minutes talking to you about this other 10 or 15%, because it does drive a lot of the metrics. It is a lot of the job creation that occurs locally, and how we go about doing that, actually. And basically, these companies approach us. The vast majority of them are natural organic foods. We have worked with software companies. We have worked with clean tech companies. But typically, they'll find us through either networking events. Our program managers in those sectors, we encourage to go out, be visible in the community, hand out a lot of business cards, make sure everybody knows who they are, and talk to a lot of entrepreneurs. And so they're visible members of the community. The other piece are referrals. So remember those 1,500 people. Boulder's, like I said earlier, very friendly, very open town. If you're semi-skilled at networking, chances are you can get in front of the right people. A lot of times what will happen is these entrepreneurs will have coffee with one of our advisors, and basically the issues that the company is facing is way more complicated than they could ever really address in a coffee meeting. Maybe it's more complicated than this person wants to get into with them, and they realize they need more help than they're going to get in this hour meeting that they just had with everybody, with that entrepreneur. So they'll send them to us. So that's actually been a real source of companies that come in off the street looking for help, is our advisor network, and them pointing these companies in need of help to us on our doorstep. And chances are they'll land on my desk, and we've instituted a bit of a, I wouldn't say it's set in stone, but we do look for certain things when we're screening these different companies that come in off the street looking for help. So the kinds of things that we look at in our screening process, I mean, the overall generic question that we're trying to answer is, are they a good fit for our services? And how we actually screen these guys, we look at a couple of things. One, we're going to look at the background of the entrepreneur. Is this the first time they've done this? Is this their third startup and they have a very specific issue that they need help with? What's really the business acumen of the entrepreneur when it comes to the industry that they're in? The other thing that we really look hard at, and I think one of the keys for this whole thing, is market validation. Typically, if you're a food product, as I like to say, I don't know if your salsa tastes good, but if Whole Foods or someone else has it in retail distribution, that's a good enough validation for us. For something like a food product, we want to see it in retail distribution. If you're a software company, if you're a Web 2.0 company, you better have a beta up, you better have users, and hopefully you're generating some revenue off of that. Things like clean tech have been a little harder because you might need some time to develop that product fully to where it needs to be before it's actually commercially viable. So we'll look at other things like what are the strategic partnerships that you've set up, have you gotten any investment dollars in that validates what it is that you're doing, and other things. But that's really, that market validation piece is pretty key. Then we'll look at some other things like what's the financial health, how much potential do we really think it has, how much will your business drive those metrics that you saw. Because we've got a very, this is not a good business model, but basically what we charge these clients to go through our engagement doesn't cover the cost of providing the service. We make that up with the City of Boulder money, we make it up with our corporate sponsors as well. Now during that screening process, one of the things that we're really trying to do is identify what it is that they really need help with. That can vary from company to company, but if I use the food companies as an example, typically it has to do with manufacturing, distribution, working with a broker, branding, packaging. They generally fall into the same buckets, and what we try to do is figure out which of the 3 or 4 that we're going to address during their engagement with us. And once we have their sign-off on that, what we'll do is we'll go into our advisor database, and out of that 1,500, about 250 are out of the food industry locally here. There's a real concentration of a lot of expertise, and it's not sort of some of the luminaries like the Mark Retzloffs of the world. We've been fortunate enough to develop a network of people that are sort of behind the scenes that make the industry go. They're the ones that work at like Cisco, that are buyers for Whole Foods. They really have a great understanding of the industry at a very granular level, which is a really big help if you're getting into the food industry because all your friends told you your salsa tasted really good, and just people at work started bugging you for it, so you started selling it to them. Then you went to the farmer's market and you're making a few more bucks, and now you thought you could make a business out of it. What people don't understand is the food industry is actually one of the most competitive out there. As I explained it, the grocery stores don't get bigger, you're going to kick somebody out. And if you're not sort of tracking the right way, you're the next one to get kicked out. It's actually a really competitive, very well established, very large industry. So we're able to put domain experts around some of these companies that have faced those issues. And we'll use the issues that they're facing to select those people. And then we'll hold a series of working meetings. Roughly it runs about 4 months is our average engagement with these guys. Then they graduate, we track them for 5 years. I have to hound them for about a month at a time. And then they eventually give me that information. I think that's pretty much all that I have for you guys. Next slide. And our website, I mean, you guys may or may not have looked at it, but basically what we're really trying to do there is we use it more as a brochure. We have examples of some of the projects up there. We found that to be pretty effective at getting people to actually submit their resume to us, which is basically the call to action on our website. We post other things like job opportunities news. I think since 2009 we've had about 20,000 visits. So Yahoo's not worried, use Google, but it is pretty helpful in communicating what we do. And we are trying to experiment with LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and things like that. So any questions? How's that good, huh? You're that tired.
Yeah, that's probably a better bet.
Thank you.
Yeah, you have my perfect piece of wood. Thank you. All right.